So, you've picked your starter? Great! That'll be 5,000 Poke Dollars, please. What's that? It's out of your price range? You didn't expect to have to pay? What did you think this is? Professor Barkley's free Pokemon giveaway? You can't expect to get things for free, you know. So either pay the price or get out of Professor Barkley's sight! Hi, welcome back to the Cronia region. So, last time we left on a cliffhanger. As you saw, if you didn't watch the last video, I recommend doing so. The link will be in the description below. But luckily, if you refuse Barkley's premium starters, an ally throughout the game, known as Brook, will give you some bootleg starters. They're a bit different from the premium trio. For one, they're all 2-stage. Another difference is that you evolve them for your friendship, and all of their final evolutions are monotyped. Oh, and they're not a grass, fire, water trio. They're a fighting, flying, rock trio. Those 3 types were chosen because that is a type triangle that operates in the exact same manner as grass, fire, and water without there being any overlaps of those types. Let's get into them. Meet Occat, Falcoth, and Calcifera. I wanted their types to be very clear just by looking at them. Occats will be clearer upon evolution, but I tried having the colours represent it. Also, if you're wondering how they tie into the personality triangle, Occat is cool, Falcoth is funny, and Calcifera is cute. First up, we have Occat, the fighting type starter. I commissioned Kai Fakemons R on Instagram for this art again. The name comes from occult and cat. Anyways, Occat is based on a cat sea. But what is it? It's a fairy creature from Celtic mythology, specifically in the Scottish Highlands, which is essentially a large black cat with a white patch on its chest. Now, because I wanted each starter to be a colour resembling their type, I had to make Occat have more of a tortoiseshell coloration. Kinda like my cat, Pebbles, but at least I made the shiny black to be more in line with the cat she. Also, I'm not sure if it's pronounced Cat She, Cat C, Cat Sith, I don't know. I'll probably alternate on pronunciations, I apologise. Also, the shinies in this starter trio reference their design origin as opposed to secondary types, since they don't have secondary types. I recommend looking up the Cat She, as it's such an interesting idea to base a Pokemon on. I might actually revisit it and use some of its other aspects in another cat Pokemon I have in the pipeline that also happens to be fighting type. It'll be different, I swear. The relevant ideas I have for this Pokemon are the connections to witches and the occult. Legend has it that the Cat Sith was actually a shape-shifting witch, which is why I wanted to make the tail look like a broomstick. As for the occult, a ceremony which involved burning the bodies of cats for 4 days and 4 nights could be performed to summon a demonic cat she called Big Ears, who would grant the wish of anyone who took part in the ceremony. Yeah, that's a grim thing to reference in a Pokemon concept, but I'm sure there's worse out there. To reference this, I gave it big ears. So I've given reasons for it to be many types, but not fighting. So why is it fighting type? Well, it is believed that this fey creature was inspired by either wildcats or Keller's cats, which are a hybrid species of wildcats and domesticated cats. Also, I must state that wildcats and feral cats are 2 different things. But wild and feral are actually synonyms with ferociousness. So it's a pun. It's a wild cat that's a wild cat. However, I am making it a special attacker to reference its spiritual origin. This was a fairly deep design and I'm quite proud of it. Falcoth is next, the flying type starter. I commissioned my partner, Decay Fakemon, on Instagram for this art. Anyways, the name comes from Falcon, Gowth, which is the Scottish Gaelic word for wind, and oath, which will become clearer when I discuss more of the design origin. As you can see, it's blue. Sort of light blue, almost periwinkle. This is because those colours tend to represent the flying type. It's a baby peregrine falcon. They're fairly common around Scotland, so this makes sense. It's funny because it has an ego, hence why it looks smug. But why? Well, I wanted it to be more than just a peregrine falcon. Despite the concept art I made just being a peregrine. Yes, I know I'm bad at art. Why do you think I commission people? I decided to find mythology relating to this bird, and I found in Native American culture, falcons were said to live in the upper world, with the stars, the sun, and the moon, hence the space motif with its face and beak tying in with these celestial bodies. The gold in its design is a reference to deities, since falcons were seen as messengers of the gods, since they can travel between the upper world and ours. They are even believed to rule the upper world, so that's why there's sort of a deity theme, because it's a messenger of the gods that lives with them. That's why it's smug. It believes it deserves praise, Kuzco style. Also, the oath part of its name is because there is an oath to deliver, as well as believing it's above everyone else to the point where they need to swear an oath to it. As for why the deity connotations are gold specifically, it's because gold symbolizes wealth and luxury, something which those in power, such as emperors or deities in myth, would have in abundance. This is why the shiny is yellow, to reference this, and because having multiple gold elements would clash in my opinion, we had to settle for second best, silver, or maybe even better with platinum. I think you'll decide about that. The pink in its shiny is still kinda spacey, but in a different way. To round off this trio we have Calcifera, the rock type starter. I also commissioned my partner, Decay. The name comes from calcite, which is a kind of calcium carbonate, and Conchifera, which is the phylum of mollusk it is based on. With the knowledge that I was going to make a rock type starter, I immediately thought of crystals, as they would be a theoretical way to bridge the gap between the rock type and a possible animal that could produce crystals. Naturally, I found out mollusks produce crystals, which makes sense because what else would their trails be made of? After researching which mollusks would work for the design, I thought of the Conchifera phylum, and I immediately thought of a clam that was a bit afraid, but then it would come out of its shell, quite literally, once shown love and affection and friendship. I decided on a clam specifically so its eyes could peek out, as I thought this was very adorable. Also, it's brown because of its rock type. The shiny is pink, which I'll explain when it evolves. As I said before, you have to attain high friendship with these three Pokemon to get their evolutions. Let's see what they are. Firstly, there's the evolution to Ocat, Mucifer. The name comes from Lucifer, which is a Native American wildcat spirit, Lucifer, aka the devil, and was also the name of the cat from Cinderella. Mew, which is onomatopoeia for the sound a cat makes, and fur, which is what some cats are covered in. Now it's a witch! Or is it? Either way, it's been condemned and now fighting for its life, due to it being based on witches and witch trials, hence the feminine appearance. A lot of the witch trials were baked in societal misogyny of the time. It's also based on cats tied with superstition as well. Witches have many associations with cats, wildcats in particular, cat she in particular. Witch trials happened in Scotland too, due to there being a lot of superstition here. Heck, King James VI rewrote the Bible to have emphasis on condemning witches. This does tie into the fire elements with burning witches at the stake, as well as burning the bodies of cats for 4 days and 4 nights for that ritual. The white tuft of fur on Okat's chest is now a dress, which is intended to evoke the imagery of said stakes. Other witch elements here manifest themselves as the big ears from before now making the shape of a witch's hat. And the broomstick tail also has elements of a cornhusk witch doll, which is a Native American doll which are believed to be magical charms which protect homes and livestock, which very much fit the theme due to inviting Catchy into your home and leaving it some milk. That was believed to cause blessing for the household, and if you didn't do that, that was believed to cause a curse. Witch dolls are also very similar to the Samhain Shuck dolls, which were used in pagan and Celtic cultures for similar reasons, specifically during Samhain, which is the end of the harvest season, which occurs between the 31st of October and the 1st of November. Those two new elements which I discussed were expansions of Okat's prominent features, and were actually Kai's idea, and they're amazing ideas, and I think he really outdid himself. Time for the evolution of Falcoth, Galagrin. The name comes from Gale, a very strong wind, and Peregrine. It is now the adult form of a peregrine falcon. It's essentially got the same sort of design inspiration and philosophy as its previous form, but now it's got a head crest that looks like a crown, and it also has some stars, which I love. I like to think Gallagherin is a more humble deity due to its good relationship with humans built over time, with the species' history of being messengers, as well as its evolution method literally being friendship-based. One more thing I wanted to incorporate that isn't clear in its art, because how would I be able to show this, is the fact that peregrines are the fastest animal on the planet, which is why I'm guessing they were believed to be messengers of the gods. So canonically and stat-wise, Gallagherin is one of the fastest non-legendary, non-mega Pokemon because of this. Heck, in the Cronia region it is the fastest non-legendary Pokemon. The justification in lore is that Gallagherin has mastered flight, just in general, hence why it is for sure flying type, not just because it's a bird. Finally, we have the evolution to Calcifera, Gastronite. The name comes from gastropod, which is another word to refer to snails by, and aragonite, which is a kind of crystal mollusks can produce. As promised, it is now out of its shell. But why is it a snail? Firstly, I feel this makes for a better thematic design evolution than the other way around with coming out of its shell. Secondly, snails can be found in Scotland. And thirdly, as I said, mollusks produce crystals, hence a rock-type snail. But I can't just do another rock-type snail without giving it some distinct themes to justify its existence, so I decided to dig deeper to see what snails symbolize. Of course you get wisdom and patience and all that, but you also get fertility? Okay, I could work with this, but I might need to dial it back a bit for a kid's game. I know love and fertility are two different things, but they are related, and since this is a rock type anyways, what rocks symbolize love? Rose quartz, which symbolizes a bit more as well, but again, I think the connection works. So if I make the shiny pink like this crystal, since I want the main colors of the bootleg starters to represent their type as much as the premium starters do with theirs, I can make the snail themed around love. Hence the very strong heart motif. Speaking of color, some people may think Gastronite may resemble a certain boss from Conker's Bad Fur Day, but I think it looks more like chocolate, which is a common romantic gift fitting with the love theme. The shiny does look delicious too though. So, 15 Pokemon into the decks. What I have left to mention is signature moves and abilities. For the premium starters, they all have moves that are functional clones of Flying Press, i.e. moves that could act as one of two types depending on what does more damage. I love this idea. It's kind of broken, giving it to the starters I think works out. Lineage has Blooming Swipe, which does either grass or fairy type damage. Fernox has Forge Hammer, which does either fire or steel type damage. And Plabmaril has Egg Grenade, which does either water or poison type damage. All are physical moves, bar maybe Egg Grenade as it's a projectile. I haven't done proper balancing, I've only just come up with the concepts. As for the bootlegs, all would have stab moves. Musifer would have Wild Spirit, which is a special move. Gallagherin would have Fast Return, which is a physical move, and Gastronite would have Crystal Passion, which would be a special move as well. I'm not sure what they'd all do, but I'd leave that up to your imaginations. All of them would be equivalent in strength, and they will be powerful at the expense of accuracy, much like the new signature moves in Pokemon Legends Arceus. As for abilities, all the Grass, Fire, and Water starters have Overgrow, Blaze, and Torrent respectively, and that's still the case with mine. But as for the Fighting, Flying, and Rock type ones, they don't have any equivalent, so I just made some. Underdog is the fighting equivalent, Updraft is the flying equivalent, and Calcify is the rock equivalent. So all the starters have an ability which increases their attack or special attack by 50% if they have less than or equal to a third of its maximum HP remaining, unless they have their hidden abilities. The Buttercup line has a new ability called Hay Fever. If the opponent contacts this line, the defense and special defense stats on the opponent are lowered. The Flamoo line has a new ability called Blacksmith. If the opponent contacts this line, the defense and special defense stats of the line are raised. The Platycrute line has a new ability called Naval Spirit. If the opponent contacts this line, the attack and special attack stats on the Pokemon are raised. Meanwhile, the Falcoth line has Aerolate. The other two bootleg starters have new clones of Aerolate I've introduced, so instead of normal type moves becoming flying, Militarize changes normal type moves into fighting, and Crystallize has normal type moves become rock. I'll also bring up egg groups because they're going to be important for this region's gimmick. I won't explain the gimmick yet, but it's best to mention the egg groups as we go along with the Pokemon. Bear in mind, I'll only use the final forms when discussing this, but anything that applies to a final form will apply to the whole line in this video. All 4 of the mammalian starters will be part of the field egg group, including Pladmerol. Although Fronox doesn't have a secondary one, the other 3 do. Leonage also has the grass egg group for obvious reasons. Pladmerol is part of Water 1 since it's semi-aquatic, and that's where most semi-aquatic Pokemon end up, and Musifer is in Fairy due to being based on a mythological fairy creature. Gallagherin is in Flying because it's a bird, and Gastronite is in Mineral because of its crystalline nature. Also, before I forget, I need to mention who did the character designs that I've shown off. I forgot to mention this last time, but Professor Barkley was done by Ondu Region on Instagram, and Brook has been done by VicWorks on Instagram. But that's all of my starter Pokemon. Which one would you pick? Would you spend the $5 on the premium starters, or cheap out on the bootleg starters? Comment below which one you'd have on your team, and yeah, you can only pick one out of these 6. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and share, it really helps out, and click the notification bell to make sure you don't miss the next video in this series. Check out the Coronia Region's Instagram as well. I've only really been posting the starters, but I also posted a sneak peek at what the legendaries may be, as well as some other characters you may meet along your journey in the Coronia region. And I'll see you next time where I cover the box art legendaries for the Coronia region. See you guys then.